Welcome back to episode 5 of the Rare Is Us podcast. I'm your host, Noah Griffith, and today I'm going to be sharing a special story with you about a man who climbed a mountain in hopes of curing FA. So later this month, I'll be attending an event called Ride Ataxia in Gainesville, Florida. So at its core, Ride Ataxia is a bike ride that raises funds and awareness for FA. And they hold events all around the country each year. It's a good time for FA families and patients to get together and meet each other. So I'll have my family with me, my mom, my brother, my grandparents, and also I mentioned this in my latest blog post, but my dad's best friend Billy Holbrook will be coming along with me for this one for his first time and his family. So I'm really excited about that. It'll be a great time, but Rod Tech said they have events all around the country, like I said, Philadelphia, Chicago, Gainesville, which used to be in Orlando. And also, they have hometown events each year. They have one in Dallas, and they have hometown events in I think they did one in Minnesota, also in Boston last year, which I'm not exactly sure how that works, but just people at the FA host one in their hometown, which is really cool. It's a new idea they started, but Rodexia started in 2007. It was founded by an FA patient named Kyle Bryant. Um, he did a ride across America, so all around the country that he talks about in a book he wrote, um, called Shifting into High Gear. And that's a great book. Definitely recommend that. And to learn more about ride taxi, you can go to curefa.org and there's a ride taxi tab. It helps me stay physically active. Riding my trike. I ride a three-wheel grounded trike. Um, that pretty much takes care of balance for me because even before the noticeable onset of FA around age 14, is usually what I say. I was never able to learn to ride a bike. I would get on it and I would try and I would tip over within seconds every time. So it's just never something that I really stuck with. But when I rode this cat trike, I was able to ride a bike for the first time, which kind of took me by surprise. Um, and really just how similar it was to what able-bodied people do. I was able to do it, which I thought was really cool. And it's not every day with FA you add another ability to your arsenal. It's usually get them taken away. So it's really something that's been very good for me to stay active, to also be able to raise awareness and funds for FA, but also I think one of my favorite things about Red Text is that it's just very empowering to me and to get the community together for one cause that's bigger than any individual. Like like I said, with FA, there's so much you can do, and you feel powerless and like isolated. But when you get the community together and then you give them an action they can take and a step they can take against FA to hit FA back, it's like a golden opportunity to fight against FA that you're given. Because honestly, it's hard to think of good ideas to engage the community and to fundraise for FA, but this is just a great opportunity that you're handed. And it's been very meaningful in my life and helped me grow a lot and empower me to join this fight against FA. I have tattoos on each arm that say keep fighting. Um, and really, I would not have developed that mindset without ride taxi. I don't think. It's just like, it's not, you're fighting, keep fighting and fail alone. It's that you always have in your mind, even after these events, when you go back home, it's not like you just resume with how life used to be on your own. It's like you always have in your mind, like there's other people that are in this fight too, and getting together each year just really reminds you of that. Helps you to stay strong and stay active. And, it's something we can do for a long time because, my physical abilities do decline. Like riding a bike has become tougher for me. There's probably going to be a point in the future where, like, I won't be able to pedal with my legs. I might start riding a hand cycle, but riding the bike really helps delay that and um make that where it's not gonna happen as soon because you're fighting against progression. And that's something that's really special. Like it's something that, you can adopt into your lifestyle with FA, but you can also do it um and help fundraise and bring awareness you know, through staying active. So it's a double-edged sword, kind of like it's a good way to fight. Um, and it may not be anything spectacular. It may not be, say, climbing a mountain, but we can leave that to my man Scott Osleeb because he did that himself. He's done it twice now. At the beginning of this year, he scaled the tallest mountain peak outside of Asia. It's Argentina's, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Mount Aconcagua in Argentina. It's 22,000 feet tall. Without further ado, let's bring on Scott. What's up, Scott? How are we doing today?
Doing great. Excited to be here.
And we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining. And if you don't mind kind of introducing yourself a little bit, where are you from?
My name's Scott Osleeb. I grew up in Boston, but I went to the University of Texas and lived in Austin for many years after going to UT, graduating. And that's where I met the Smith family, whom, brought me into the whole FA community. So they deserve all the credit.
And so I've already kind of mentioned, um, they climbed about, I'm sorry if I mispronounced
No,
this,
it's all right.
Aca- Aconcagua. Is that right?
Aconcagua. Yep, that was right. Yep,
Mm.
Aconcagua.
So I've already mentioned that it's 22,000 feet, correct?
It's actually just under 23,000. It's
Okay.
closer to 23,000 feet.
Mhm. And you're the first person who does have FA to be on this podcast. So
Oh,
can you
wow.
can you explain to everyone why are you in this fight and why does FA awareness matter to you?
So quick story of how, again, I mentioned the Smith family. Um, so I met a gentleman named Scott Smith about 10 years ago. And at that time, I was going through treatment for I have stage 4 leukemia, and I was going through treatment, and sort of at the same time starting out a new friendship with this gentleman named Scott. Um, and then shortly after I finished treatment, I lost my immune system as sort of part of a byproduct or a result of the chemotherapy I went through. And I had to be hospitalized in a wing that was for people who had no immune system. So therefore, I couldn't be around people even it was very rare that a nurse or a doctor would even come into my room. And when they did, they were fully masked in like hazmat suits because literally I had no immune system. So any virus or anything could have killed me. I got really sick and had to be admitted there. That's how they found out that my immune system was gone. I had really high fever. Anyways, long story short, um, I ended up having to stay in that room for a month, and like I said, couldn't have no visitors, and it was pretty lonely. And this new friend I had just met, we'd known each other 8 months or so at the time, called me every day just to check up on me. And um, it was very impactful. I was alone, 24 hours a day. I could look out my window. I was on this like 10th floor of this hospital, and I could see the world, but I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't even like have food that wasn't fully cooked. So like they wouldn't let me like bring in food from outside sources. It had to be cooked in the hospital. So it was that kind of like lockdown scenario. And
Mm.
this guy who I've just started to become friends with called me literally every single day. And and then I actually, even when I got out of the hospital, for several months after that, I had to be really careful. Like I barely left my house. I finally got to go home, got to be with my dog, and still had to, people brought me groceries, and Scott and I continued to talk, and he called every day and just really, got to know each other, and it was just a really unique situation. And at the same time, he was going through something where he has two daughters. Um, the oldest one is Grace, the younger one is Stella. They were, I think, 6 and 3 at the time, 6 and 4 maybe. Um, and the older one was having symptoms of something, and they just didn't know what. They were in and out of the hospital all the time, seeing various doctors all the time. And I just remember talking to him and like sort of like, as with anything, I think, it's the fear of the unknown. And I kind of watched them go through that as I was kind of like going through my health stuff. And um, finally, after probably about a year, which was a while after I finally was able to sort of be incorporated back in the world, they got a diagnosis of this rare disease, Friedreich's ataxia. And I knew that after everything he did for me, which, it was super impactful. I mean, like, it may not even be coming across in this interview right now, but generally when I tell the story, I cry, and I'm really trying not to cry because it was super impactful to me.
I can feel that because I'm not saying that the situations were the same. Yours was obviously a lot more emphasized, but it reminds me of my experience during COVID, um, where my immune system is not great. I don't feel comfortable going out. My friends are.
Sure.
Um, so having a friend to help you feel not so isolated, not so alone in what you're dealing with is, I understand how big of an impact that can have. So that's amazing.
So 100%, that's exactly what it was like. And so like I had already done some awareness and fundraising for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society prior to while I was going through treatment and all that stuff.
Mm.
But when I got out of that hospital and then finally was able to come back in the world, I was like, I would do anything for this guy and his family. And I had no idea if I ever would be able to repay him for just the simple kindness he showed me.
Mm.
Um, and so that when his daughters, when they finally figured out what it was, and he started, telling me about it and all that, I realized that like one small way I could give back was using that energy I had to raise awareness and funds that I had for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, I decided that I would do that. I would rather do that for the research association attached, to his daughter's disease. And so that's sort of how it started for me. I didn't even know how I would do it at the time. Honestly, I didn't even know. Um, so, but I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I needed to do something.
Mm,
And I decided first I climbed Kilimanjaro back in 2019,
mm,
and we raised like close to like $23,000, and an awareness, and that's always been my goal. It's awareness,
mm.
and then obviously pandemic hit, but I had been kept thinking like, what am I going to do next? This was so inspirational, and um, I decided to do Aconcagua, which was very big challenge, but I knew I wanted to do something.
What was the difference from, what's the difference in difficulty from Kilimanjaro to Aconcagua?
So Kilimanjaro, first of all, is in Africa. Um, so it's in Tanzania. Couple things. It's much more of a really big hike. It's about 20,000 feet, so it's still really tall. It's the tallest mountain in Africa. Um, it's also it's warmer there. So, it's Africa. So it was warm. I mean, it was cold at the summit because you're at 20,000 feet, but for the most part, it was fairly warm. And it was just like a really long, each day was a really long hike. Aconcagua was much more mountaineering, where we were, gear was very important. Having the right gear was important. There was a lot more safety issues involved. It wasn't technical where we had to climb faces or anything, but there were moments where you had to have crampons. I don't know if you're familiar with what crampons are. They're like the spikes that go on the bottom of boots,
Mm,
and ice axes. Um, because there's times where you're just going through snow, and then the weather's just vastly different. It was brutally cold on Aconcagua and windy. There were wind gusts up to 100 miles an hour, with sustained winds on some days of like 50 to 60 miles an hour. It was brutal. It was so brutal. But it's part of the whole thing. It's funny, I was interviewed before I went, and they asked me, the interviewer for the news show in Austin asked me if there was sort of an irony or the meaning behind climbing in mountains,
mm,
and there absolutely is, because I've said it to both Grace and Stella numerous times, is that we all have our mountains to climb. Some of them are figurative mountains, and some of them are literal. And so it just has become this thing where I'm not a mountaineer. I enjoy being outside and I like hiking and doing all that thing, but for me, it was more about the challenge of, and the sort of grand scale of doing something that people might be interested in. This guy with stage 4 cancer climbs mountains to raise money and awareness for a buddy's daughters who have a totally different disease.
mm.
So that's how that whole thing came about.
Yeah, and you talk about how you raise money for cancer research to start with, and then we're inspired to start with FA research. So what was your um I guess your swap in mindset from going from one cause to the other?
You know, it was pretty obvious when I started thinking about it that like cancer research gets all the money.
Mm-hmm.
There is no lack of funds coming in. There's hospitals, giant facilities just for cancer. And I saw that like my little part could be so much more impactful for Farah versus Leukemia Lymphoma Society. So it was just this whole, it just clicked, it made sense. Like I said, I knew I wanted to give back to that family. I could never repay their father for the kindness he showed me. And but I knew I was going to try.
And so you talked a little bit about this, but why climbing a mountain? Why? There's so many ways you could gain awareness, like I do with ride ataxia,
Sure, which is
for
amazing.
example. It's kind of, I talked about this in my intro. It's just like a golden opportunity I was given to raise awareness. Like when I was diagnosed, I was like, what can I do about this? Well, that's just something that's like there for me to join in. But you kind of came up with this on your own. This is your own call that you answered. So why something as difficult as climbing a mountain when you could do something so much less challenging? Like you explained the end of your journey to me as it was kind of like almost torture. Like it was very extremely tough. So why did you choose climbing a mountain and specifically?
Well, it's like I said, I mean, I've talked, having talked to Grace and Stello over the years, talking about the challenges, their challenges with FA, mine with leukemia.
Hmm.
I just knew that climbing a mountain was representative of the challenges, and not just people with FA. I think most humans face,
Hmm.
in their own way. And I just wanted it to be sort of, that representative of the challenges that people face, that you keep walking no matter what. You just keep going. It gets hard, you fall down, you get up, and you keep going. And not only that, so Grace, the his my friend Scott's oldest daughter, is definitely further along. Her disease has progressed much faster.
Hmm.
And I literally saw her in the early stages fall down and get back up. And it just made sense to me that, again, I wanted it to be some sort of large gesture, something that wasn't, like you said, just a little easier, or something that, um, might not, or just wasn't as large in scale
Hmm.
and wasn't as challenging. But I
And
knew that
right.
I wanted it to be representative of the challenge that I saw them walking through every day.
Hmm. It sure raised a lot of eyebrows. I think like I mentioned, we got emails with the Fair Ambassador program about what you guys are doing. And immediately I was just like blown away by it. Like I went and looked at your Instagram and how you had trained toward it now, you had put so much effort into it. And like I had never put that much effort into a fundraiser before, and it blew me away. Um,
Honestly, I had never done anything like that either. Even for Kilimanjaro, I had I didn't train nearly as much. I didn't. I did. It was so much less. For this, I've never been as dedicated to anything in my life.
and you were facing challenges of your own, like you said. What was it, 10 years ago you started your battle with leukemia?
Yep.
Um, So what additional challenge did that put on you physically? And I know recovery was a tough process. So what was the additional battle that you had facing leukemia as well as just, the stress of climbing a mountain?
Well, in terms of, this particular climb, so like this was tough because it was a lot of travel and general, my immune system's just not great in general. It's better than, like I said, it was when I was in the hospital and had no immune system, but it's still not great. You had mentioned COVID, like during COVID, same thing, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't
Yeah.
be out with normal people. I'm very immunocompromised. So when I travel, generally, I end up getting sick. I wear a mask the whole time. It doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
end up getting sick. So when I landed in Argentina, where Aconcagua is, um,
You flew.
I flew down there.
Mm,
Um, long flight. It was like a 15-hour journey.
mm,
Um, and when I got there, I was sick. I got sick. I got sick. I thankfully got down there about 5 days before we took off because I wanted to get down. I always like to leave myself a little room to rest up and get back ready to go. And but about even 2 days before, I thought I might not be able to even go. I was so sick. And thankfully, on the day we were leaving, I felt well enough to start. But then I was sick the whole time we climbed. I don't want to get too graphic, but it turned into like a raging sinus infection.
mm,
And every time I would blow my nose for about 2.5, 3 weeks on that mountain, it was blood. It was just pure blood. It was so rough. Oh man. But it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. But it's funny, I was talking with Kyle, you know, um, before I went, and I told him, he was like, why are you doing this? I was like, because the one way I knew I could give back is I'm really good at suffering.
mm,
And that's what it was for 3 weeks. I don't know if you saw I went with a friend of mine. After, he made it one day and had to turn back.
mm.
It was so
You
brutal, man.
you
So,
made
yeah,
it 21,000 feet. Is that correct?
yep, yep. I mean, it's 21,000 feet. So the highest camp is 20,000 feet,
Mm,
and you attempt summit from there. They wake you up at about 3 in the morning, and you head out in pitch black with headlamps, and it was freezing. I woke up and I had just this, it just didn't feel like my day. Um, I woke up freezing. My feet were numb even before we set out. And I said to myself, I'm going to do what I can. And I was hoping my feet would warm up over time, but they just didn't. And, at 21,000 feet, the sun's just starting to rise. And, our guides and my team, we all gathered, like, they took off my boots, they were trying to warm my feet. And my guides made the decision that I would have to turn back because it could turn into frostbite. And if you get frostbite, it's amputation. So I didn't want to lose my toes. So I
yeah.
turned back.
And I saw on your Instagram the boots you wear on your feet are very protective and to still have the danger of frostbite through that. That's insane.
Oh man, it was so cold. I can't even tell you the level of cold. And I live up in the Northeast. I live in Connecticut now. So I deal with cold.
Yeah.
That level of cold in the pitch black at 21,000 feet, and the wind is just,
Wow.
oh, it was so cold. I couldn't get warm. It was just unfortunate. But I don't know if you saw this on my Instagram. That's kind of where the miracle happened, is that this team of people who assembled from all over the world, we didn't know each other. We all came together to climb this mountain, and you really become a team. Like, you help each other, you push for each other. When someone's struggling, you pick them up and carry them. You do everything together. You eat together, you sleep together. Everything's together. None of these people had ever heard of FA before. None of them.
And tell about the flag you had.
And I was carrying the flag, and I knew that flag was going to get to the summit. It was going to get to the summit. The fair flag was going to be held high on the highest peak outside of Asia, the tallest peak in the Western Hemisphere. I knew that flag was going to get there. So when I'm sitting there at my lowest point at 21,000 feet in the pitch black of night, just struggling and feeling so defeated, all of a sudden, one voice after another of my team literally said, "Give me the flag, I will get it there." And like I said, these are people who had never heard of FA before I started telling these people all along the route about why I do this and who I do this for. They are why I do this. Grace and Stella are why I do this.
And
These people reached out and said, "We will get the flag there," and they did. They carried it the rest of the way.
there's a picture of them with the flag at the summit.
That is the tallest peak outside of Asia, and the
Wow.
Farah flag has been to the top.
That's something special.
It was truly amazing. And that's what this was always about for me. It wasn't about me getting to the top. It was about the flag getting to the top. It was from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down to Austin to be with the family, and we did a little fundraiser down there, like a kickoff thing. And people kept saying to me, "So when you summit, this, that, and the other," and I kept saying, there's no guarantee I summit. It has about a 30% success rate of people who try to people who make it. So I knew going in, this was never, I was going to do everything I could, but I knew there was every chance that I wouldn't. But what I said from the beginning was that the flag would get there, and it did. And that's what mattered. It was never about me being on that summit.
Mm.
So,
And in addition to all the awareness you raised, how much money were y'all able to raise as well?
we raised, I think, about 15,000 this time. We raised more when I climbed Kilimanjaro, which was a little disappointing to me. I gotta be honest. But I'm not like, I don't have like personal social media. The only social media I have is for this.
Mm.
And I'm not actually even a social media guy. But if anything can make me do social media, it's this. So I did it, and I did what I could. And like I said, I flew down to Austin. We did some news shows. But again, for me, it's also much more about awareness. My team, we were 8 people. Those people all now know about FA, and they went to their places all over the world. One gentleman was from Indonesia, another was from Germany, another was from France. Those people went all around the world and talked about the crazy guy who climbs for FA. And that's how it spreads.
Mm.
And that's the impactful thing, to me at least. The money, I'll keep trying my best to raise money. But I've always said, to raise real money, you have to have a lot of people. You have to have an army of people out there spreading the word. Because I can raise X amount. But if I get 10 people, we're going to raise 10x. So that's always what this has been about for me. And I'm proud of the money that we raised, and I thank every single person who cared enough to donate money. But I tell everyone, I'm not asking for money. I'm asking you to spread the word about a disease that is underfunded and not many people know about.
Mm. And I know perfectly well what you mean about the lack of awareness and the power it can have. I went through years before I was diagnosed where the signs were obvious, but nobody knew FA was the answer.
Yep.
I had scoliosis, I had fatigue, I had I was doing therapy and just hoping to get better, and it was getting worse. And I think that awareness is so impactful because if people can get diagnosed earlier, especially now with an approved treatment, that's years of progression you can potentially slow down or stop if you start that drug earlier, which the drug is not available to people under 16 yet, but I think they're working on that. Um,
Yeah.
that's the next step. Um,
Yeah, I've been following
so,
along on that. It's amazing.
yeah. Um, and I could go on and on about how important that awareness is, but you talk about your team, and I saw pictures on Instagram of the team you climbed with. Um, who is with you, and how do you get to know those people?
So I first met a friend down there that I went to college with, one of my best friends from college. His name was Jason. We had actually talked about doing this together.
Mm,
Um, and so he and I met in Argentina. He flew down different. He lives in Dallas, Texas. So we just met in Argentina. And then a couple days before you leave, you have a meeting with the guide group that you're going with. It's for safety stuff. They want to check out to make sure you have all the proper gear, and then you meet your team. And it's just people who come together and signed up to do this from all over the world. And none of us knew each other beforehand. Like I said, I knew my friend Jason, and then two guys, another group, a pair of friends. They met up there, and they were both on our team as well. So they knew each other. But outside of that, none of us knew each other. And within hours, we went out to dinner that first night in the town we stayed in before we left to go climb a mountain. We went out to dinner every night together. We just hung out and started to get to know each other. Because when you're on a mountain like that, there's no creature comforts. You're living in tents.
mm.
Your food is, once you get to base camp and then higher. So I don't know how much people know about it. So it was they dropped us off at the entrance of the park, and then we had to hike in 30 miles just to get to the mountain. So it takes a couple days just to get to the mountain. And you're living, like I said, you're living in tents. You're all eating together in like a communal tent, and you just get to know each other, and you truly do have to rely on each other for a lot of different things. And so what happened was my friend Jason had a medical emergency and had to leave after the first day. He had an asthma attack. It was very windy, very dry down low, and very dusty. And the wind and dust was just a recipe for disaster for him. And he had to leave. A guide had to take him off the mountain. So then I was just with people again that I had just met from all around the world. And thankfully, we all got along so famously. These are some of the greatest people I've ever met. We all still talk, it's about a month and a half-ish since we got off the mountain. We still talk all the time through WhatsApp. Um, and they're just the greatest people. And every person on that team was important to like making that our team so tight. There were other groups doing it at the same time. Not many of the other teams had the camaraderie we had. It was just amazing.
And I feel like that would be so crucial because it forces you to come together when you're going through something that tough. You don't have other comforts to look forward to,
Yep.
you can't snuggle up on the couch with their blanket and watch Netflix.
No, there was definitely no Netflix. So yeah,
And
trauma bonding. It really is.
mm, and you can't no like you said, no comfort food. Like there's no going to Chick-fil-A there.
No.
So what would you say besides the people you were with kept you going when things got really tough?
That is a fantastic question. Because in that meeting, I said that where we first all met, where they were going to check our gear and talk safety and all that. the one of the head guides said, "This is going to be the toughest thing you ever do. It's you're going to suffer." They told us that before we ever left. They said, "You have to have something that a place in your head that you can go to just get you through those moments of pain." And I knew for me, there was no question what it was. I think about Stella and Grace. I think about those girls all the time. And I think about the challenges they face, especially Grace. Like I said, she's further along, unfortunately, in her disease.
Mm-hmm.
And I see how she, for lack of a better term, she walks through it with such dignity. You know, obviously she's not walking, she's wheelchair bound, but
Yeah.
so maybe a poor choice of words, but she rolls through it. I don't know, but with such dignity, she is the person I want to be when I grow up. The love and consideration and kindness, this person who has every excuse to not be those things, exhibits and gives to the world. That's all I had to think about to keep going. If she can keep going, I knew I could keep going.
Mm.
I wasn't going to stop. Like I said, at 21,000 feet, they told me you have to go. Like it was a choice, but it was medical. It was, if you don't go back, there's a high probability you will lose your toes.
Mhm.
They don't want that happening. It was their call. They said you need to go back.
Yeah.
So until that point, I had many occasions. Oh my God. I sent you some photos. I could send you photos where, you're going up this, it's that steep. It's just sand and rock, and then you're going through periods of snow over like glacial snow, and the wind is just literally trying to blow you off the mountain.
Mm.
That, you're just suffering. That I just thought to myself, I thought about both Grace and Stella. And I thought about their dad and what he had done for me, and that I was going to keep going for them.
I can't. I can't think of any way you could be prepared for those conditions. But I saw how extremely hard you trained for this and probably did the best you could to be prepared for it. And even, I think, flew out there to be prepared for the cold. Is that right?
Yeah,
Um,
well, I had trained up. We have a second house in Vermont, and it can be really cold there. So did a lot of training up there in the real cold and snow. So
mm, how do you feel like, walk me through what your training regimen was like, and do you feel like it was, um, I don't know, do you feel like it prepared you at all for what you're about to go through?
I think it definitely was sufficient. It's funny, I'm 50 years old and I have stage 4 leukemia. The people on my team were a lot younger than me. One gentleman was my age, but everyone else was a lot younger, in their mid to late 20s,
Hmm.
in shape. So none of them had to train nearly as hard as I did. I so I would do at least 2 hikes a week of about anywhere from about 5. I would hike daily, but 2 big hikes a week of about at least 5 to 8-ish miles, with trying to do, anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 feet of elevation, while wearing a pack that had 40 pounds in it, because we were going to be carrying a lot of weight. On that mountain, you're carrying a lot of weight. You're carrying all your gear. You do have help to carry some of the communal stuff, the tents, the water, and the food and all that. But for the most part, you're carrying your own stuff. So, um, twice a week, I did a really big hike with my pack. Every day I hiked. I like to hike with my dogs anyway, so I do that. And then I had a personal trainer who I'd see 2 to 3 times a week. And then I would go, I also just had a regular gym membership and I would go on one of the Stairmasters
Mm.
and I would have the 40-pound pack on and my headphones in and I would just do it for an hour.
Oh, it's crazy.
It was terrible. I would, honestly, I was in the best shape of my life at 50 years old.
Mm.
I was prepared. I was definitely sufficiently prepared. I was even prepared for the cold. The one thing that none of us were prepared for was the wind. It just happened to be the windiest season on Aconcagua ever.
Mm.
Ever. They'd never seen winds like that. So it made it very, very tough. So I couldn't have prepared for that. I mean, I trained in pretty brutal weather in Vermont, wearing those boots that you alluded to, those crazy boots that we wore at high altitude,
Mm.
that are really warm, and you can put like I said, the spikes on them to walk through the glacier and stuff like that. Um, I had trained. I had done a lot of training. I trained. I did all that. I'm talking that regimen that I just explained. 2 long hikes a week, but like at least hiking every day for about 3 miles, plus 2 to 3 times a week with a trainer, plus 2 times a week doing the Stairmaster for about 8 months straight, every week, never taking a break.
And how long was the actual climb?
It took us about 17 days to get up. Um, and then just 2 days to get off the mountain. And that was actually parts of that were more brutal than going up.
Mm.
It was rough. So altogether, we were on the mountain for about 9. Let me back up. It was a 2-day hike in just to get to the mountain, and then about a 15-day climb, and then 2 days to get down. And in that 15 days, we would hike up to a camp, bring up gear, stay a little to get acclimated to that altitude, and then hike back down and sleep down at the lower camp. And then the next day, hike back up and stay there. And then we would stay there for a day, bring gear to the next camp, stay there for a little few hours, have lunch, and then hike back down, sleep there, and then hike back up.
So how many hours a day usually were y'all hiking?
About 8.
Mm.
There were days, no, yeah, about 8.
Were you able to sleep well up there? Imagine in the cold, that would be tough.
It was tough, but you're just so tired, and
Mm.
there's zero light.
Yeah.
Once the sun goes down, it's pitch black. I mean, you see every star. You're just in the middle of the Andes Mountains. You're just in this middle of this mountain range. As
Mm.
far as the eye can see, all you see is mountains, snow capped. And this is summer. It was summer there. Because you can only attempt this, normal people. There are crazy people out there who attempt in winter, but generally people only attempt this in summer. And these are the temperatures in summer there. There's snow, parts are deep. And there's, like I said, there's wind and negative 20 degrees every
Mm.
night.
And you talked about you had limited connection with the outside world. Like you got emails at one point, is that right?
So once we took off into the park, the 2 days in, we had no connection to the outside world. And then the third day, we hiked up to base camp. And once you were at base camp, they had Wi-Fi.
Mm.
So that we could get on to, I could talk to my partner Megan, and I got the email. She forwarded me the emails from everyone in FA. So we had internet. You didn't have cell service or anything, obviously, but you could, you know, use WhatsApp to call and make that type of
Yeah.
call.
Yeah, not the,
But after that, there was no more,
yeah.
no more, no more connection to the outside world. It was about 9 days after that where it was just, that's it. This is it. Once we left base camp, there was no more.
Mm. So, did you contact the Smiths? Why you took a video? I'm sure, called your family, things like that. Like, did you contact the Smiths?
Of course. Scott and I talk or text many times every day. This is not a day that passes really that he and I don't communicate.
Mm.
And they knew what I was doing. So obviously, while I was at base camp and had an opportunity to talk to the outside world, yeah, I was absolutely talking to them. They were cheering me on, and I love talking to Grace and Stella. We text all the time. I try to send them dad jokes when I learn new dad jokes. They get to kind of get a kick out of that. It's become kind of a thing. So Grace had a surgery, and I don't want to reveal too much about her stuff, but like at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. So I
Mm.
went down to be with them for that, and I was fortunate enough to visit her in the hospital every day while she was going through her stuff. And every day I brought in a new dad joke.
Mm.
And it just started from that, and it just became a thing between us. Even to this day, like I think Saturday, I sent her a dad joke, and then Grace sent me one, and it just become a thing, you
What
know?
what what's your what's your best dad joke that you had?
Oh man.
Mm.
Um,
I'm sure everyone loves
okay,
to hear it.
okay. Okay. So I'll tell you the best one I've said, and then I'll tell you the one Grace just sent me a couple days ago. The one I said, I think the best one I've said to them, and it's obviously not good, it's bad, but it's which celebrity is most prepared for breakfast?
What is it?
Reese Witherspoon.
I've never heard that one before.
I know it's so bad.
Okay, that is pretty good. That is pretty good. Let's see.
And then the
Hershey
one Grace just got me with, knock knock,
is there
two.
two.
It's whom. Get it? Like to whom?
Yeah.
Oh man, I know. She got me. But those are the type of things. Literally, it's the best. I don't have kids of my own. They told me after chemo I was never gonna be able to have kids. And I don't want to get too sobby on this. This is not what this is about, because this is not even about me, it's about them. They're my family. They're my family.
Mm.
And so like we're at this point where we don't need to even talk about the FA stuff anymore. We do. And Grace and I share. She knows what I'm going through with leukemia. I've been very sick since I got back. I've had to go through many tests since I got back because they're trying to figure out what's going on with my leukemia. I go back to the oncologist actually this Wednesday because they just got my PET scans back and they want to go over everything with me. But
Mm.
we we can communicate on a level that I think many people can't. That's the gift. That's actually the gift of all this, in my opinion, is that you and we don't suffer from the same disease, the same illness. We can connect in that the very human aspect of that we're both going through something.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying? And so the way I can connect with those girls is just unlike any relationship I have with my regular friends. I don't want to say regular. They're regular. That's a bad word. My friends who don't suffer, because I also have friends who have cancer.
Mm.
You know, the way I communicate with them is the exact same way I communicate with these girls, these young ladies. And so we don't have to talk about it all the time because we also don't want to have to. It doesn't define me and it doesn't define them. They're my family.
Yeah. Think I
Hmm.
understand. I think I can feel a lot of what you're saying and a lot of what you're feeling. Like the COVID situation is just you when you go through losing your health and losing your abilities like that, there's a change in mindset, something that has a click that just you don't understand it unless you go through it. And y'all both gone through that. So that's a special bond that y'all have.
No doubt. Like I said, it's a gift. That may sound crazy to people who don't have some sort of illness, some sort of health challenge in their life. But I know for me, having that family is in my life is maybe the biggest gift I've ever
That's awesome. And again, we, the FA community, cannot thank you enough for not just joining this fight, but going above and beyond like you have. Um, wow, it's an amazing story. Thank you so much, man.
I appreciate that.
And
But
thank you.
honestly, the one you have to thank is Scott Smith because he paid it forward. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
Because he gave me so much in my time of need. That's how this whole thing
but you answered the call. That's
happened.
that's
Thank
what
you.
matters. That's that's all you can do when life happens. You react. You either answer the call or you don't answer the call. You're a doer or you're a talker, is what they say.
Yep, that's right.
And you're a great example of a doer. So
I appreciate that.
thank you for answering the call and thank you for sharing your story today. It means a lot.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully we can do this again after I do whatever the crazy thing I decide to do next. Because there will be another one, trust me.
And what an amazing story. Scott, went, like I said, went above and beyond what he had to do, what he was asked to do. He saw an area where he was able to make an impact where some people would have limited themselves and said, oh no, I have my own condition going on, like it's not safe for me. He went above and beyond. He put no limitations on himself. And that's what I think a doer and not a talker does is when you see something that you have the ability or the resources to do to make an impact, you answer the call no matter what limitations or what setbacks there could be. Um, and with FA, sometimes there are setbacks that, you know, there's no way around. You lose mobility. You can't say, oh, like, I can play sports even with FA. Like, don't let it be a setback. No, like, FA is a setback in some sense, but like, there's so much more you can accomplish when you don't limit yourself to what you people say you can or can't do. Um, God literally did not let things stop him until he was about to lose his toes from frostbite. So he went that far to accomplish a goal. And look how much he accomplished. Look how much, look at what a difference he made on the world. And what difference he's going to continue to make. So I'm not trying to brag on myself, but one thing I always say, I'm proud of how I've become a doer in the same way because with the limited abilities that I have with FA, I've um started my own blog, started my own podcast, which I don't get paid for either of them. In fact, I'm relying on, sponsors to help make this episode happen. Um, this wouldn't happen without Jesse, you know, allowing me to come and use his studio, and this wouldn't happen without Justin Blue sponsoring the episode and allowing this all to happen. And it definitely wouldn't happen without all my supporters. Um, And like, I'm not doing this because, you know, it's convenient for me or it's easy for me or because I'm good at it. Um, I obviously don't have the voice for a podcast that a normal podcaster might, have. Um, I'm definitely not doing it because I'm talented or I'm popular or because it gives me any good profits. I'm doing it because I see a need to share stories like these that would not be heard about in the same way if I didn't, and I have the ability to do it, and I am doing it. Not because it makes me cool or talented or good, but because I see a need and I'm trying my best to get it done. And I don't have a lot of listeners, but I appreciate each and every one of you listen. And my goal, like I said, is just if even one person can be impacted or even one perspective can be changed through this, then I'm doing my job. Um, I'm getting all the revenue I need by just, you know, being able to impact others. I think that's a platform that I'm given with that fame, with challenges and mountains that I have to climb in my life. I'm able to share them and hopefully change the perspective of other people for the better. Um, and because each and every one of the guests I've had on this podcast have changed my perspective, so I know they can they can benefit other people as well. Um, and I'm just so grateful to be able to do this and to be able to share these amazing stories with you guys and hopefully continue that in the future. And again, I want to thank Jesse Shelby, Justin Blue, um, for making this episode happen and for this continuous support. And I want to thank each and every one of my listeners. Um, you're the reason why I do this as well. To learn more about FA and the work FAIR is doing to raise funds and awareness for FA research, visit curefa.org. And as always, go and subscribe to knowandknowit.com to see all my blog posts and my podcast as well under the podcast tab. I want to thank all of you guys for your support. And until next time, keep fighting.